Hollywood promised fame, fortune, and immortality. But for many Golden Age stars, the ending was far from glamorous. From Judy Garland's tragic final performances to Bela Lugosi's desperate last days, these were icons adored on screen and abandoned in life. This video reveals the heartbreaking stories of actors and singers who died penniless, betrayed by fame and forgotten by time. How did stars like Marie Prevost and Sammy Davis Jr. lose it all? The answers will shock you and stay with you. Judy Garland. Judy Garland, the legendary star who captured hearts as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, amassed what would have been a staggering $40 million during her career, a fortune in her time. Yet by the time she passed away on June 22, 1969, at just 47 years old, she was nearly broke. Her estate was valued at only $40,000, while her debts had ballooned to around $4 million, including large sums owed to the IRS. Her heartbreaking financial collapse was driven by a devastating combination of personal and professional missteps. A lifelong battle with addiction to prescription drugs and alcohol took a heavy toll, both physically and financially. Mounting medical expenses, along with years of mismanagement from agents and advisors, slowly drained her earnings. But perhaps most damaging was her third husband, Sid Luft, who allegedly burned through much of her fortune on reckless business ventures and personal spending. As her fame faded, Garland was forced to perform in small, often seedy venues just to stay afloat. At times, she even skipped out on hotel bills she couldn't afford to pay. In her final months, she was singing in a London nightclub for meager wages, still fighting to keep her head above water and provide for her children. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn, the charismatic icon of Hollywood's golden age, rose to international fame with swashbuckling hits like Captain Blood and The Adventures of Robin Hood. At the height of his career in the 1930s and 40s, he was among the highest-paid stars in the industry, earning millions. But behind the scenes, Flynn's fortune was vanishing as fast as it came in. When he died on October 14, 1959, at only 50 years old, his estate was shockingly valued at just $10,000. Years of reckless spending on yachts, mansions, and endless parties drained his wealth. He lived for the moment, rarely considering the future. His infamous 1943 statutory rape trial, though he was acquitted, cost him heavily in legal fees and permanently scarred his public image. A bitter divorce from actress Lily Demeter added to the financial strain, with a large settlement awarded in her favor. Flynn's later years were filled with missteps. A film project he hoped would revive his career collapsed when funding vanished, leaving him in debt. Struggling with alcoholism and failing health, Flynn resorted to taking roles in low-budget films just to survive. The man who once symbolized glamour and adventure died nearly broke, haunted by the very lifestyle that made him famous. If you're curious who ends up on this heartbreaking list, wait until you see what happened to Elvis Presley and Mickey Rooney. Comment 5. If you're staying till the end, you won't believe how their stories unfold. Barbara Payton. Barbara Payton burst onto the Hollywood scene in the early 1950s with stunning beauty and undeniable screen presence. Her breakout role opposite James Cagney in Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye, 1950, showcased a rising star poised for greatness. Audiences were captivated and the industry took notice. She seemed destined for cinematic glory. But behind the curtain, her life unraveled with alarming speed. Turbulent romances and a growing battle with substance dependence began to cloud her once promising future. Hollywood, obsessed with image, turned cold as scandal after scandal engulfed her. She was repeatedly detained for alcohol-related public incidents and financial misconduct, and her name quickly became more associated with headlines than headlines. As acting roles disappeared, Barbara's world collapsed. By her late 30s, she was living in poverty, resorting to street-level sex work for survival to stay alive. Gone were the glamorous parties and red carpets, replaced by loneliness, illness, and despair. Years of substance use severely affected her health, leading to heart and liver failure. On May 8, 1967, Barbara Payton died at just 39 years old, broken in her parents' modest home. Without the means for a proper funeral, she was quietly cremated. a tragic and haunting end to a woman once embraced by the spotlight. Fatty Arbuckle. Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle was once a titan of silent film, a beloved comedic actor who raked in over $1 million a year, an extraordinary fortune for the 1920s. At the peak of his fame, he was one of the most recognizable and highly paid stars in Hollywood. But everything came crashing down in 1921 when he was accused of raping and causing the death of actress Virginia Rapp. Though Arbuckle was ultimately acquitted after 3 sensational trials, the damage was done. His films were pulled from theaters, and the public turned on him. Hollywood studios, desperate to protect their image, blacklisted him completely. The legal battle not only destroyed his reputation, it also devastated his finances, costing him around $700,000 in legal fees alone. Desperate to work again, Arbuckle tried to return to filmmaking under the alias William Goodrich, but his projects found only limited success. The shadow of the scandal followed him until the end. On June 29, 1933, at just 46 years old, Arbuckle died of a heart attack, his fortune gone. He left behind little more than debts and heartbreak for his widow, a tragic fall from grace for one of Hollywood's earliest superstars. Dorothy Dandridge. Dorothy Dandridge was a dazzling force in Hollywood, her beauty and voice commanding attention in every frame she graced. She made history in 1954 as the first African-American woman to receive an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress, thanks to her unforgettable role in Carmen Jones. Her success challenged the deeply segregated system of mid-century Hollywood and gave hope to generations of black performers who followed. But while the world saw a glamorous star, Dorothy's private life was filled with heartache and struggle. Even with her trailblazing fame, she was continually denied roles worthy of her talent because of entrenched racism. Financial hardship followed her throughout her career. Despite periods of success, her earnings were crippled by poor financial management and heavy IRS debt. By 1963, she was bankrupt, owing roughly $150,000 in back taxes. Emotionally exhausted from failed marriages and drained by bad investments, Dorothy found herself isolated in her final years. Her story ended in tragedy. On September 8, 1965, at only 42, she was found dead in her small West Hollywood apartment. The official cause was an accidental overdose of antidepressants in her bank account. Just 24 cents, a haunting end for a woman who had once symbolized both brilliance and possibility. Marie Prevost. Marie Prevost's rise in Hollywood was nothing short of spectacular. In the roaring 1920s, she was a luminous figure of the silent screen, celebrated for her magnetic charm and natural wit. Films like The Marriage Circle and Kiss Me Again made her a household name, and for a time she was one of the most in-demand actresses in the business. Her lively presence and carefree elegance perfectly captured the spirit of the jazz age. But as the film industry embraced sound, Marie's career took a devastating turn. The arrival of talkies spelled the end for many silent stars, and Marie struggled to find her footing in this new era. Her voice, considered ill-suited for speaking roles, shut her out of the very world that once adored her. With fewer roles and mounting rejection, the fame she once enjoyed faded fast, leaving her adrift. The loss was more than professional, it broke her spirit. Desperate for comfort, she fell into alcoholism and depression, her days increasingly shadowed by loneliness and financial hardship. By the mid-1930s, Marie was living in a rundown apartment, barely scraping by. On January 21, 1937, she was found dead at just 38 years old. Acute alcoholism and malnutrition were to blame. Gone was the glitter, the fame, the fanfare. All that remained was a somber ending for a woman once full of light. With only $300 left to her name, Marie Prevost's death became a stark symbol of how quickly Hollywood forgets its fallen stars. Sammy Davis. Sammy Davis Jr. was one of the most electrifying entertainers of the 20th century, a triple threat who could sing, dance, and act with a charisma few could match. A beloved member of the Rat Pack, he broke racial barriers and dazzled audiences around the world. Yet behind the spotlight, Davis was trapped in a deep financial mess that shadowed his final years. When he died on May 16, 1990, at the age of 64, Sammy owed the IRS a staggering $7 million in back taxes. Even after selling off his assets, including homes, luxury cars, and prized possessions, his estate still remained $5.2 million in debt. The root of his financial collapse? A dangerous mix of lavish spending, gambling, and chronic mismanagement. Known for his extravagant lifestyle, Davis never held back, living large with multiple properties, flashy jewelry, and a taste for excess. His tax issues weren't just about unpaid bills, they were worsened by years of interest and penalties piling up. Despite battling throat cancer, he kept performing until the very end, trying to chip away at the mountain of debt. In his final months, Davis was still on the road, still negotiating with the IRS, still trying to make things right. His story is a powerful reminder that even legends aren't immune to life's hardest lessons. Before we dive deeper, we're curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments below and let's see how far the legacy of these forgotten stars still reaches. Veronica Lake. Veronica Lake, once the glamorous screen siren of the 1940s, captivated audiences with her icy allure and her iconic peekaboo hairstyle. Made famous in films like Sullivan's Travels, 1941. She was the epitome of Hollywood elegance, a star who seemed untouchable at the height of her fame. But behind the silver screen magic, Veronica's life unraveled in silence and sorrow. Her downfall came swiftly and painfully. Struggles with alcoholism, fragile mental health, and a string of tumultuous marriages drained both her spirit and her finances. By 1951, she had declared bankruptcy, an early sign of how far she would fall. Work in Hollywood dried up, and by the 1960s, the former leading lady was reportedly working as a waitress and hostess in a New York City hotel, just to get by. Lake spent her final years largely forgotten by the industry she once ruled. Isolated and ailing, she died on July 7, 1973, at just 50 years old from hepatitis and acute kidney injury. Her last days were spent in a small hospital in Vermont, far from the glitz of Hollywood. At the time of her death, her only possessions were a modest bank account and a few personal items, a heartbreaking end for a woman who had once been one of the most recognizable faces in cinema. Terry Thomas. Terry Thomas, the iconic English comic actor with a trademark gap-toothed grin and a career that lit up classics like Those Magnificent Men in Their Flying Machines, 1965, faced a heartbreaking decline in his later years. In 1971, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, a cruel twist of fate that slowly stripped him of the ability to perform, the very talent that had made him beloved. The cost of care was staggering, with annual medical expenses climbing to £75,000, over $100,000 in those days. Forced to sell his cherished home and personal belongings, Terry Thomas watched his fortune dwindle as his health worsened. With no way to earn and savings running dry, he was left financially devastated. In a touching gesture, his friends and peers in the entertainment world rallied to support him, organizing a benefit concert in 1989 that raised enough money to cover his care. Even so, he spent his final days in a humble retirement home for actors. He passed away on January 8, 1990, at the age of 78, a man who gave the world laughter yet spent nearly everything he had trying to fight a disease that took so much from him. Buster Keaton. Buster Keaton, famously dubbed the Great Stoneface, was a silent film legend whose unmatched blend of physical comedy, fearless stunts, and cinematic innovation helped shape the very language of film. With timeless classics like The General, 1926, he became a master of visual storytelling, captivating audiences with his stoic expression and brilliantly choreographed chaos. His work stood as both art and spectacle, quiet on the surface yet bursting with creative genius. But the arrival of sound films in the late 1920s brought turbulent change. Keaton's decision to sign with MGM proved costly. The studio's rigid control stripped him of the creative freedom that had defined his early success. His career dimmed as he was forced into roles that didn't reflect his unique talents. The Great Depression deepened his financial struggles, and a costly divorce in 1932 drained much of his remaining wealth. These pressures, coupled with personal turmoil, led to a battle with alcoholism that affected both his health and public image. Yet Keaton never surrendered to despair. In the 1950s, he experienced a quiet resurgence, appearing in television programs and smaller film roles, reminding the world of his enduring charm and skill. Though he never recaptured the towering fame of his silent era, his influence only grew with time. On February 1, 1966, Buster Keaton died of lung cancer at the age of 70. True to form, he remained active in his craft until the very end. While he lived simply and without wealth, he was far from forgotten. His legacy as a pioneer of cinema, a visionary whose silent artistry spoke volumes, continues to inspire filmmakers and audiences alike. Bela Lugosi. Bela Lugosi, eternally etched into Hollywood history as the definitive Count Dracula from the 1931 classic, spent his final years haunted not by monsters, but by poverty. Despite the fame his iconic performance brought, Lugosi found himself trapped in the shadow of that role. Typecast as a horror villain, he struggled to find diverse acting opportunities, and the offers he did receive were often in low-budget productions with little pay. Behind the scenes, Lugosi silently battled chronic sciatica, for which he was prescribed morphine and later methadone. Unfortunately, his reliance on these drugs grew into addiction, further affecting his ability to work and deepening his financial woes. By 1955, he declared bankruptcy, listing a mere $11,000 in assets and $3,500 in debts, a devastating contrast to the grandeur of his on-screen legacy. When he died of a heart attack on August 16, 1956, at the age of 73, Lugosi left behind only $1,900 in cash and a handful of personal belongings. His funeral, quietly paid for by Frank Sinatra, was a touching yet tragic reminder of a man whose fame outlived his fortune. Bud Abbott. Bud Abbott, the straight man of the iconic comedy team Abbott and Costello, lived out his final years far removed from the spotlight he once commanded. Together, the duo entertained millions and made an enormous impact during World War II, helping raise an estimated $85 million in war bonds. But their patriotic contributions would later come back to haunt them. The IRS denied $500,000 in tax exemptions they had claimed for bond-raising expenses, opening a devastating financial wound. After Lou Costello passed away in 1959, Abbott tried to carry on solo, but his health was already deteriorating. Plagued by epilepsy and facing a rapidly fading career, he found himself increasingly isolated from the industry that once embraced him. As his financial troubles deepened, the IRS seized his home to settle lingering debts, forcing him into a modest apartment with few possessions. In a heartbreaking turn, Abbott was eventually compelled to appear on television to ask fans for financial help. He passed away on April 24, 1974, at the age of 78, virtually penniless, his remaining assets unable to settle what he owed. For a man who once brought laughter to millions, his end was marked by sorrow and silence. Bobby Driscoll. Bobby Driscoll was once the golden boy of Hollywood, a child star whose talent lit up the screens of the 1940s and 1950s. Discovered at just 5.5 years old, Bobby quickly rose to fame, landing major roles in beloved films like The Fighting Sullivans, 1944, and Song of the South, 1946. By the time he was a teenager, he was earning a staggering $1,750 a week, an extraordinary sum for the era. His performance in The Window earned him a special Academy Award for Outstanding Juvenile Actor in 1949, and he became the voice and face of Disney's Treasure Island, solidifying his place as a top-tier child actor. At his peak, Bobby was unstoppable, adored by fans, praised by critics, and admired by fellow actors. But as is so often the case with child stars, the spotlight eventually dimmed. Puberty hit hard. Acne and physical changes disrupted the wholesome image Hollywood demanded, and the offers quickly dried up. By 16, the very industry that had once embraced him so fully had shut its doors. The loss of fame sent Bobby spiraling. He struggled with identity, rejection, and depression, eventually falling into drug addiction. Arrests followed, along with jail time and a rapid decline. The child once hailed as Disney's darling ended up drifting through life far from the cameras and applause. When Bobby Driscoll died in 1968, he was just 31 years old. His body was found in an abandoned New York tenement, surrounded by empty beer bottles and forgotten by the world. No one recognized him. He was buried in an unmarked grave on Hart Island, the city's potter's field. His story is a devastating reminder of how fleeting fame can be, and how the pressures of early stardom can lead even the brightest lights into darkness. Bobby Driscoll's fall from grace remains one of Hollywood's most tragic tales. Bobby Driscoll was Disney's golden boy, yet he died alone in an abandoned building, buried in an unmarked grave. Do you think Hollywood failed him? Yes or no? Tell us in the comments. Just type, yes, he deserved better, or no, it was inevitable. Your voice matters. George Raft. George Raft carved out a distinctive niche for himself during Hollywood's golden age, particularly for his gritty gangster portrayals. His breakthrough arrived with a memorable performance as Gino Rinaldo in Scarface, 1932, and he later bolstered his reputation by starring in films like They Drive by Night, 1940, and Some Like It Hot, 1959. Though his on-screen roles exuded cool confidence, off-screen he lived a lavish, free-spending lifestyle that steadily drained his fortune. He was famously generous toward friends and family, using his Hollywood earnings to lend support whenever possible. However, his penchant for gambling took a severe toll on his finances, leaving him vulnerable as the years wore on. Even more damaging were some of the pivotal film roles he declined. He passed on opportunities that proved blockbuster successes for Humphrey Bogart, such as The Maltese Falcon and Casablanca. These decisions stunted his long-term prospects, denying him the kind of enduring fame and financial security Bogart enjoyed. Throughout his life, Raft also mingled with questionable figures and participated in dubious business ventures that eroded his financial stability. By the mid-1960s, he was deep in debt, struggling under the weight of mounting taxes and unpaid bills. His financial situation deteriorated so drastically that he declared bankruptcy in 1966. Efforts to rekindle his stardom through smaller roles and public appearances did little to salvage his fortunes. When George Raft died on November 24, 1980, at the age of 79, he was reportedly still in dire financial straits, an ironic ending for a man who once moved with such ease among Hollywood's elite, personifying the cool swagger of the silver screen gangster. Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye was undeniably one of the most gifted voices in soul music, a trailblazing singer-songwriter whose influence still echoes through generations. His 1971 album, What's Going On, isn't just a musical achievement, it's considered a masterpiece, often ranked among the greatest albums of all time. But behind the smooth vocals and chart-topping success was a man constantly at war with his own life. Despite his fame, Marvin struggled with money management. Much of his income vanished through messy divorces. His 2 failed marriages cost him dearly, with huge portions of his royalties going to his ex-wives. One of the most heartbreaking financial blows came when he was forced to surrender the rights to his album, Here, My Dear, just to cover $600,000 in alimony. On top of that, serious tax issues drove him to flee the US and live in Europe for a while, hoping to escape mounting debts. As the pressure built, Marvin turned to drugs and alcohol to cope, only deepening the spiral. His final days were marked by emotional instability and financial ruin. Then came the tragedy that shocked the world on April 1, 1984. During a heated argument between his parents, Marvin stepped in. The confrontation turned deadly when his father, Marvin Gaye Sr., pulled the trigger. The first shot struck Marvin in the heart, killing him instantly just one day before his 45th birthday. Marvin Gaye died broke, burdened with debt, and far from the spotlight he once commanded. His voice may have faded too soon, but his legacy, that still sings. Now, let's turn to the story of another icon, Elvis Presley. Elvis Presley. Elvis Presley burst onto the scene in the 1950s, forever changing the music landscape with his electrifying presence and timeless hits. Dubbed the King of Rock and Roll, Elvis wasn't just a chart topper, he became a cultural phenomenon. Alongside his music, he lit up the silver screen with lead roles in fan-favorite films like Jailhouse Rock and Blue Hawaii. Over the course of his career, estimates suggest he raked in somewhere between $100 million and a staggering $1 billion. But behind the glamour was a life spinning out of control. When Elvis died of a heart attack in 1977 at just 42 years old, he shockingly had only around $5 million to his name. Worse still, he owed twice that amount to the IRS. Years of reckless spending, costly indulgences, and a spiraling drug dependency had drained his once massive fortune. His sudden death left his estate in crisis. Priscilla Presley, his ex-wife, and his father Vernon inherited not just Graceland, but a mountain of unpaid taxes. Refusing to let Elvis's legacy fade, Priscilla made a bold move. She opened Graceland to the public. Her decision turned the estate into one of America's most iconic tourist attractions. By 1993, when Elvis's daughter Lisa Marie inherited it, the estate was worth a jaw-dropping $100 million. However, history seemed to repeat itself. At the time of Lisa Marie Presley's tragic and unexpected death in January 2023, she was reportedly $4 million in debt, much of it owed to the IRS, proving that even royalty can fall victim to financial ruin. Bert Reynolds. Bert Reynolds was more than just a movie star. He was a symbol of 1970s American swagger. Born Burton Leon Reynolds on February 11, 1936, in Lansing, Michigan, he was raised in Florida by a tough law-enforcing father. Athletic and ambitious, Bert seemed destined for football stardom at Florida State, but a devastating knee injury, followed by a car crash, ended that dream. That detour unexpectedly led him toward acting. In the 1960s, he started lighting up TV screens with roles in shows like Gunsmoke, Riverboat, and Hawk. But it was his leap to Hollywood that truly changed his fate. Gritty films like Deliverance and The Longest Yard catapulted him into the spotlight, but it was the Smokey and the Bandit franchise that turned him into a pop culture legend. With his signature mustache, infectious grin, and undeniable charm, Reynolds became one of the highest-paid actors of his era. But behind the fame, financial disaster loomed. After a high-profile divorce from Loni Anderson in 1993, Bert's money troubles escalated. By 1996, he filed for bankruptcy, revealing over $10 million in debt. He even had to part with his cherished Florida ranch. In a brutally honest 2015 Vanity Fair interview, he admitted, "I trusted the wrong people," acknowledging a lifetime of lavish spending and poor choices. Though he regained some financial footing, the damage was done. Bert Reynolds died on September 6, 2018 at 82. Once a king of the box office, he left behind a legacy marked by both wild success and painful lessons. Up next, Anita Ekberg. Anita Ekberg. Anita Ekberg was once the very definition of cinematic glamour. Born in Sweden in 1931, she later embraced Italy as her second home, where she would make history. Her breakthrough came with Federico Fellini's La Dolce Vita, where her iconic fountain scene turned her into an international sensation. With her striking blonde beauty and undeniable screen presence, she quickly became one of the most desirable stars of the 1950s and 1960s. Ekberg lit up the screen alongside Hollywood giants like John Wayne, Jerry Lewis, and Dean Martin. She wasn't just admired, she was celebrated, courted by directors, and ranked among the top-paid actresses of her time. At the peak of her fame, she lived a life as extravagant as the characters she played, surrounded by designer gowns, luxurious estates, and elite social circles. But fame proved fleeting. In her later years, Ekberg's fortunes crumbled. Poor financial decisions, betrayal by those she trusted, and a string of personal disasters, including a fire that destroyed her home, left her destitute. As medical bills piled up, she turned to the Fellini Foundation for help, a haunting echo of the industry that once adored her. Anita Ekberg passed away in 2011 at the age of 83, not with applause but in quiet obscurity. Her fall from dazzling icon to poverty-stricken recluse remains one of Hollywood's most heartbreaking endings. Mickey Rooney. Mickey Rooney was a Hollywood legend whose career defied time. From child star to seasoned veteran, he appeared in over 300 films, dazzling audiences with his energy, charm, and sheer talent. One of his most famous appearances was in Breakfast at Tiffany's, but his true legacy was his astonishing versatility, able to switch between drama, comedy, musicals, and more with ease. Even Laurence Olivier once praised him as the best there has ever been. A rare compliment from a fellow icon. At his height, Rooney was among the most bankable stars in the industry, earning millions and headlining hit after hit. Directors adored him, fans adored him even more, and money flowed freely. Yet behind the spotlight, his life unraveled. He struggled with addiction, alcohol, prescription drugs, and a string of failed marriages, 8 in total, most of them ending in pain. In 1962, despite his once enormous fortune, he filed for bankruptcy due to poor financial management and personal chaos. But the heartbreak didn't end there. In 2014, shortly before his death, the then 93-year-old Rooney shocked the nation by testifying before Congress. He revealed he had been physically abused and financially exploited by his own family. By the time he passed, the man who once topped box office charts was left with just $18,000 to his name, unable to afford his own funeral. From adored superstar to tragic cautionary tale, Mickey Rooney's story is a sobering reminder of how even the brightest stars can fall. Leif Garrett. Leif Garrett, once a beloved teen idol, fell into a downward spiral involving heavy drug use and ultimately homelessness. He began using drugs at the age of 14, and just before turning 18, he crashed his mother's Porsche while attempting to buy cocaine. He was found with a blood alcohol level 3 times the legal limit, and the accident left his friend a paraplegic. This was just one of many incidents tied to his battles with drugs and alcohol. In 2001, Garrett declared personal bankruptcy, with little more than his clothes, household items, and $350 in cash to his name. His only financial support came from his mother, who gave him $1,000 a month, and he had no permanent place to live. The former teen star had spent time in jail multiple times due to his drug use, and had also been in and out of rehab centers. His plight as a homeless former celebrity was publicly revealed when Sharon Osbourne remarked, "Leif Garrett is living under a bridge, and he's saving a place for you, Justin Bieber." MC Hammer. MC Hammer, once a dominant force in hip-hop, went from winning 3 Grammy Awards to experiencing homelessness. In the 90s, he was everywhere, with his infectious songs, signature parachute pants, iconic dance moves like the typewriter, and his famous catchphrase, "Hammer Time." His popularity even extended to a cartoon series, Hammerman. As his career soared, so did his spending. He owned a massive 40,000 square foot mansion, which he spent $30 million renovating, along with 17 cars, 2 helicopters, a jet, and racehorses. However, as musical tastes shifted and his popularity waned, he struggled financially. Despite his financial troubles, he continued to maintain his extravagant lifestyle, keeping his mansion and employing over 200 people. Ultimately, the mounting costs led to his downfall. He was forced to sell off his property and found himself $13 million in debt, with over $800,000 owed in taxes. Despite these setbacks, MC Hammer managed to turn his life around, moving to a more modest home, organizing concerts, and focusing on saving and investing wisely. Jan Michael Vincent. Once Hollywood's beloved heartthrob, Jan Michael Vincent fell into homelessness as a result of his addiction, violent tendencies, and sheer misfortune. He gained fame for his role in the hit TV series Airwolf, with his chiseled physique and classic American charm keeping him in the spotlight for a time. However, his struggles with alcoholism and drug abuse soon overshadowed his career, persisting throughout his life. Between 1977 and 1979, he faced multiple arrests for cocaine possession. Further run-ins with the law occurred in 1984 and 1985 due to bar fights, along with charges for felony assault, drunk driving, and physical altercations. Repeated car accidents, often caused by his habit of driving under the influence, left him with numerous broken bones. Ultimately, his right leg was amputated, forcing him to rely on a prosthetic limb or a wheelchair. His battles with substance abuse and deteriorating health culminated in homelessness. In his later years, Vincent lived a secluded life in rural areas of Mississippi and North Carolina before passing away at the age of 74. "You won't believe how this once famous celebrity ended up homeless. Comment one and now, and watch till the end to learn about her shocking downfall." Dana Plato. Dana Plato, a former child star known for her role on the sitcom Different Strokes, endured a troubled life after the show ended. Following the series' conclusion, she faced homelessness and ultimately passed away from a drug overdose. Plato began her acting career at just 14, but she was already struggling with substance abuse behind the scenes. After Different Strokes ended, she fell into difficult circumstances and became entangled in various scandals. Battling drug and alcohol addiction, she also faced legal troubles, including forging a prescription in 1992 and robbing a video store the year before. Eventually, she served time in jail and entered rehabilitation programs. In 1999, Plato was discovered living in motels in Oklahoma, homeless once again. Though she insisted she was clean and sober, just weeks later, she was found dead from a drug overdose, which was later ruled a suicide. The day before her death, Plato appeared on The Howard Stern Show, where she openly acknowledged her struggles with alcoholism and addiction. Despite claiming sobriety, many of the callers ridiculed and questioned her, which may have contributed to her tragic end. Loni Willison. Loni Willison, once celebrated for her modeling achievements, rose to prominence rapidly, but now resides in homelessness on Venice Beach due to various challenges, including drug dependency and mental health struggles. Willison gained recognition as a fitness model, frequently gracing the pages of magazines. Her career reached its zenith when she married Jeremy Jackson, the actor from Baywatch. However, her battles with meth addiction and psychological issues led her to a life on the streets. She has publicly attributed her current plight to her tumultuous relationship with Jackson, recounting incidents of severe domestic violence, including an alleged attempt by Jackson to strangle her. Additionally, she asserts that living indoors is impossible for her because of an aversion to electricity. "I had been electrocuted daily for nearly a year," she explained. "I believe that since I sense electricity, I also react to other substances like certain chemicals, batteries, fuses, wires, or different metals, so I think my body processes those elements." Whether this claim holds truth or serves as a justification for the meth addiction that drove her into decline remains uncertain. Sugar Ray Williams. The decline of public figures isn't confined to actors, musicians, or athletes alone. Take Sugar Ray Williams, for instance, a former NBA legend who was discovered sleeping in his Buick back in 2010. Williams had spent over a decade as the captain of the New York Knicks and was part of the Boston Celtics team that reached the 1985 NBA Finals. By 2010, reports surfaced of him living out of his car in Pompano Beach, Florida. In interviews, he criticized the NBA for neglecting retired players, stating that he was among many former stars in need of support. "They always emphasized loyalty to the team when I played," he remarked. "But where's the loyalty and compassion for ex-players who are struggling? We paved the way for these guys earning sky-high salaries." After retiring, Williams faced bankruptcy and struggled to maintain any jobs outside of basketball. Unlike cases involving addiction to alcohol, drugs, or gambling, his hardships seemed rooted in sheer misfortune. Ultimately, he succumbed to colon cancer in 2013. Bobby Driscoll. Bobby Driscoll, a former child star who won an Academy Award for his role in The Window in 1950, once enjoyed the spotlight. However, his life took a tragic turn as he became addicted to drugs and was later imprisoned for drug-related offenses. After his release, he continued to struggle with addiction and financial difficulties. Although he appeared in a few projects, none were significant, and he faded from the public eye. Driscoll ultimately died penniless and homeless from a drug overdose, with his body left unclaimed. In a past interview, the former Disney star reflected on his downfall, saying, "I became a beatnik and a bum. I had no residence, my clothes were at my parents' house, but I didn't live anywhere. My personality had suffered during my marriage and I was trying to recoup it." In 1968, 2 children discovered Driscoll's body in an abandoned building in Manhattan's East Village, where he was believed to have been living. He was buried in an unmarked grave on Hart Island in New York City, and it wasn't until 1971 that reporters uncovered the truth about his death. Margot Kidder. Margot Kidder, best known for portraying Lois Lane in the Superman films, was a well-known Hollywood figure. Her fame wasn't limited to her acting career. She also had high-profile relationships with figures like comedian Richard Pryor and Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau. So it was a huge shock when she was discovered wandering the streets, battling schizophrenia and severe depression. At one point, she was found living in cardboard boxes and sleeping in backyards across Los Angeles. Her appearance was strikingly unkempt, with missing front teeth and chopped-off hair. This period of homelessness began following a manic episode in 1996, and she was later located by both her family and the police, living out of a box behind some bushes in Glendale, California. During this time, she often approached strangers asking for cigarettes, and occasionally people would offer her a place to stay at a motel for the night. Eventually, she was admitted to a private psychiatric facility where she began accepting treatment. Later, she became a vocal advocate for mental health awareness and once remarked, "We are all a breath away from mental illness, homelessness, all these things we tend to look down on." Erin Moran. At the age of 14, Erin Moran rose to fame and became a household name. Best remembered for portraying Joni Cunningham on Happy Days, her life took a downturn as she faced financial ruin and homelessness later on. It was revealed that she had recklessly depleted her savings and lost her California residence to foreclosure in 2010. She and her spouse eventually resided with his aging mother in an Indiana trailer, but this arrangement was short-lived. Following a night of drinking, Moran returned home and clashed with her mother-in-law, who subsequently expelled her from the trailer park. This incident pushed her to the brink of divorce, leaving her drifting between motels without stable housing. After her eviction, she was seen appearing disheveled near an inn. Ultimately, Moran's struggles ended tragically when she succumbed to a heroin overdose, still destitute and without a home. Mindy McCready. Mindy McCready, a well-known country music star, saw her life spiral out of control. Once celebrated, she eventually lost everything and tragically took her own life at the age of 37. The singer, a mother of two, had been sent to a court-ordered rehab facility due to her struggles with addiction. Her boyfriend was discovered dead from a gunshot wound to the head, and just a month later, she died in the same location, also from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. It appears that the tipping point for her was learning that her children would be placed in the care of her estranged mother. Authorities were met with a horrifying scene, as she had shot her dog before ending her life. Throughout her life, McCready battled addiction, mental health challenges, and inner turmoil, which ultimately shattered her family and contributed to her tragic demise. David Cassidy. David Cassidy, once a beloved teen idol, spiraled into addiction and homelessness in a surprising twist of fate. His personal life was marked by multiple marriages, children from different relationships, and ongoing struggles with substance abuse. His troubles gained public attention when he was arrested for a DUI in 2010. By 2013 and 2014, Cassidy was arrested again for drunk driving, further highlighting his battles with alcohol and drugs. He openly admitted to being an alcoholic. The star of the Partridge Family faced significant challenges and, by the end of the show's run, was living in homelessness. Over the years, his life continued to spiral, with arrests for purchasing narcotics and soliciting prostitutes, reflecting the chaotic nature of his personal and professional life. Danny Bonaduce. Danny Bonaduce, a former child star, battled alcohol and drug dependencies from an early age, which ultimately led to homelessness in adulthood. His role in the Partridge Family brought him widespread fame, but over time he cycled in and out of rehab, struggling to maintain sobriety. These challenges, alongside his battles with substance abuse and alcoholism, left him without a stable home. Adding to his difficulties, Bonaduce was diagnosed with hydrocephalus, a serious health condition. During this period, he resided in his car, parked behind Grauman's Chinese Theatre in Hollywood. Despite his circumstances, he continued to interact with fans, often greeting autograph seekers from his vehicle. In interviews, Bonaduce reflected on the surreal experience of being both homeless and famous, stating, "I was still famous, and people had no clue I lived behind the dumpster. I'd be posing for pictures and signing autographs." Eventually, he turned his life around, becoming a drive-time DJ on Wisp and remarrying. However, Due to his medical condition and brain surgery, he ultimately retired from his radio career in Seattle. Does Danny Bonaduce's journey highlight the importance of mental health and addiction support for child stars and public figures? Comment yes if you agree, no if you think it's a different issue. Houston McTeer. Houston McTeer, once celebrated as the world's fastest human, faced a dramatic fall from grace after an impressive athletic career. In high school, he tied the world record for the 100-yard dash, running it in 9.0 seconds. His speed helped him escape poverty in Florida and move to Los Angeles, where he trained in boxing under Muhammad Ali and Harold Smith. In 1978, he graced the cover of Sports Illustrated and qualified for the U.S. Olympic team in 1980. However, the U.S. boycott of the Olympics that year prevented him from competing. Afterward, McTeer struggled with drug addiction, leading to homelessness during the 1980s. He spent up to 3 years living on the beaches of Santa Monica, particularly during a period when his financial support vanished after his club collapsed. During this time, he often found food at the Claire Foundation, a mission for the homeless. McTeer's life turned around when an older woman helped him, and he eventually rebuilt his life. He later married Linda Haglund, a former Swedish sprinter. Iran Barkley. Iran the Blade Barkley, celebrated for his triumphant boxing career, once boasted a fortune of $5 million, but swiftly descended into homelessness. In 2010, the New York Post revealed that the former champion had been spending his nights in subway cars and at the Howard Johnson Express. During the 80s and 90s, Barkley amassed approximately $5 million through his boxing endeavors. However, reckless expenditures and inadequate financial planning caused him to squander every penny. This mismanagement plunged him into financial devastation, leaving him jobless and destitute. He resorted to living in motels and on the streets, eventually moving into the Patterson Houses, a public housing complex in the Bronx under the care of his niece. When she could no longer accommodate him, he found himself sleeping in subway cars and later at Howard Johnson. Thankfully, assistance came from the Bronx non-profit Bronx Works and the Ring 10 boxing charity. With their help, Barkley secured housing and regained stability, dedicating himself to teaching boxing skills to aspiring young amateurs. Natasha Lyonne. Natasha Lyonne was a prominent Hollywood figure in the 90s, starring in films like But I'm a Cheerleader, Slums of Beverly Hills, and American Pie. However, her career faced a major setback, following several legal issues. Struggling with addiction and eventually becoming homeless, she was kicked out of her apartment in Gramercy Park. In 2001, Lyonne was arrested for a DUI, and by 2005, she was admitted to Beth Israel Hospital, where she received treatment for a range of health issues, including methadone addiction, a heart infection, hepatitis C, and a collapsed lung. Despite these challenges, Lyonne managed to turn her life around. She later starred in the acclaimed Netflix series Orange is the New Black and created Russian Doll, a show inspired by her personal experiences. She also appeared in Poker Face, a detective procedural series. Brett Butler. Brett Butler, a Golden Globe-nominated actress, once enjoyed immense success, but later grappled with drug addiction, leading to her stay in a homeless shelter. She gained widespread recognition for her role in the ABC sitcom Grace Under Fire. During the show's run, she faced persistent battles with substance abuse, spending considerable time in rehab. Although her struggles began with addiction, she eventually achieved sobriety. Afterwards, she left Los Angeles and settled on a farm in Georgia, where she lived with 15 pets. However, her finances eventually dwindled, leaving her residing in a homeless shelter for an extended period. It was later disclosed that she has been striving to revive her career. She aims to create a reality TV show centered on her claimed psychic abilities while performing at a downtown Los Angeles comedy club. Willie Aames. Willie Aames, famous for his roles in 8 Is Enough and Charles in Charge, experienced a dramatic downfall after a financial collapse. Once earning over $1 million a year, he lost his career, his family, and his fortune. This led to a period of homelessness where he lived in parking garages, under bushes, and in parks. Aames struggled to find work, including a failed attempt at being a wilderness guide. Reflecting on his fall from the peak of success, he said, "At the very peak of 8 Is Enough, I was making a little over $1 million a year. Then suddenly there was no job, no bank account, no wife, no child. I never dreamt it could happen that fast. I found myself virtually homeless. I stayed with friends when I could, slept in parking garages or slept in the park. It was shameful. I remember laying underneath the bushes thinking, is this how it turns out? Is this how my life really turns out? After hitting rock bottom, Aames turned his life around. He became a financial advisor after passing the necessary exams and training, and eventually returned to acting and filmmaking. He now splits his time between Vancouver and Los Angeles. Rocky Lockridge. Rocky Lockridge, a former boxing champion, rose to significant fame as a junior lightweight title holder. However, shortly after his career ended in 1992, he faced severe struggles with addiction and homelessness. Following his time in the ring, Lockridge became addicted to crack, which cost him his wife, children, and all his earnings. By 1997, he was handed a 27-month prison sentence for burglary. After serving his time, he found himself homeless, spending nearly a decade on the streets of New Jersey. While living on the streets, he suffered a stroke, leaving his body tilting to one side. Despite his past wealth and education, his post-retirement life was marked by hardship due to drug and alcohol abuse, as well as the physical toll from years of boxing. Beyond the injuries sustained in the ring, his weekends were filled with parties where he heavily consumed alcohol and cocaine. His reckless spending further contributed to his eventual loss of everything. Amanda Peterson. Amanda Peterson gained fame in the 1980s for her role as Cindy Mancini in the romantic comedy Can't Buy Me Love, starring alongside Patrick Dempsey. Her portrayal of the popular cheerleader made her a beloved teen idol, earning her widespread recognition and admiration. However, behind her on-screen success, Peterson struggled with substance abuse and mental health issues. As her career slowed, she distanced herself from the entertainment world, facing personal challenges that overshadowed her earlier achievements. Tragically, on July 3, 2015, just days before her 44th birthday, Peterson passed away from an accidental drug overdose, leaving fans and colleagues mourning the loss of her talent and unfulfilled potential. Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye, a legendary soul singer, captivated the world with his profound music, known for hits like What's Going On, Sexual Healing, and Let's Get It On. As a pioneer who shaped Motown's sound and influenced music across genres, Gaye's voice resonated deeply with listeners. However, beneath his musical brilliance, he faced significant personal struggles, including addiction, financial issues, and complex family dynamics. His turbulent personal life was overshadowed by substance abuse and difficult relationships, especially with his father. Despite these challenges, his music's powerful emotional depth made him a prominent voice for social change and introspection. Tragically, on April 1, 1984, just a day before his 45th birthday, Gaye was fatally shot by his father during a heated dispute. His death at such a young age stunned the world, but his enduring legacy as a soul icon continues to inspire artists and fans alike. Lisa Robin Kelly. Once a rising star on the hit TV show That 70s Show, Lisa Robin Kelly's future seemed bound for greatness. Known for her role as Laurie Foreman, the rebellious older sister, she captivated audiences with her sharp wit and undeniable presence. By the late 90s, she was a household name, even earning critical praise for her portrayal. However, behind the scenes, Kelly's life began to unravel. Struggles with substance abuse, a tumultuous relationship, and multiple stints in rehab plagued her career. Legal battles and personal crises drained her finances, leaving her with little support as she fell from the public eye. At 43, Kelly's life tragically ended in 2013 in a California rehab facility. She had spent her final months in and out of treatment, battling addiction and depression. Her story remains a painful reminder of the fragile line between fame and obscurity, and the challenges of overcoming personal demons. Like this video, subscribe for more. Hate it? Well, a like would be nice anyway, and let me know what went wrong in the comments. Wesley Snipes. Once one of Hollywood's highest-paid actors, Wesley Snipes was a towering figure in action films like Blade and Demolition Man, earning fame for his charisma and martial arts prowess. He won praise for his versatility, transitioning from tough guys to dramatic roles with ease, making him a box office favorite in the 90s and early 2000s. However, Snipes' rise to fame was followed by a series of legal and financial missteps. In 2008, he was convicted of tax evasion, accused of failing to file tax returns for several years. The conviction led to a 3-year prison sentence, which effectively halted his career. In the years since his release, Snipes has made efforts to reclaim his career, appearing in smaller roles and continuing his passion for film. Now in his early 60s, Snipes' story is a sobering reminder of how even the brightest stars can falter under the weight of financial mismanagement and legal struggles. Randy Quaid. Once celebrated for his quirky charm and memorable roles in films like National Lampoon's Vacation and Independence Day, Randy Quaid's career seemed destined for continued success. His offbeat humor and standout performances earned him a solid place in Hollywood's elite. However, behind the scenes, his life began to spiral out of control. In the mid-2000s, Quaid's personal issues, coupled with erratic behavior, led to a public unraveling. He faced multiple arrests, including a notorious incident involving vandalism and burglary charges, and his battles with the law only deepened. Financial instability, along with claims of being targeted by Hollywood elites, compounded his troubles. By the 2010s, Quaid and his wife sought asylum in Canada, claiming they were victims of star whackers in Hollywood. Today, Quaid lives in relative obscurity, with his once promising career in shambles. His story reflects the complexities of fame and the overwhelming pressures that can drive even the most celebrated stars into the shadows. Drew Barrymore. Drew Barrymore's name once carried the weight of Hollywood's elite, a member of the storied Barrymore acting dynasty. Known for his striking looks and smooth performances, he was poised for stardom in the 1950s. His roles in films like The Sundowners and High School Confidential showcased his talent, earning him recognition as a rising star. However, Barrymore's personal life proved more turbulent than his professional one. Struggling with alcoholism, volatile relationships, and a series of failed marriages, he found himself entangled in legal and financial troubles. By the 1960s, his career faltered as his personal demons overshadowed his talent. In his later years, Barrymore lived in obscurity, disconnected from the glitz of Hollywood. By the time of his death in 2004, he had become a shadow of the once promising actor. His tragic decline highlights the destructive nature of addiction and the fleeting nature of fame, even for those born into it. Cory Haim. Cory Haim was a beloved teen idol in the 80s, with films like The Lost Boys and License to Drive cementing his place in pop culture. Known for his boyish charm and infectious energy, he was one half of the Cory duo alongside Corey Feldman, a partnership that captured the hearts of a generation. But behind the flashing cameras, Haim's life took a darker turn. Struggling with substance abuse from a young age, his career quickly deteriorated as addiction and mental health issues consumed him. A string of failed projects and public battles with addiction marked his decline, overshadowing the promise he once held. By the time of his tragic death in 2010, at the age of 38, Haim had lived in relative obscurity, struggling to regain his career and peace of mind. His story is a heartbreaking reminder of the perils of fame and the tragic toll it can take on young stars. Gary Coleman. Gary Coleman was once the face of a beloved TV star, captivating audiences as the wise beyond his years Arnold Jackson on Different Strokes. His catchphrase, "What you talking about, Willis?" became iconic, and by the late 70s, Coleman was a household name, earning millions as one of TV's highest-paid child actors. However, his rise to fame came with a harsh reality. By adulthood, Coleman faced physical health issues, including kidney disease, which resulted in stunted growth. The financial mismanagement of his earnings left him with little to show for his earlier success, and after a series of legal battles, his money was nearly gone. Personal struggles, including a highly publicized divorce and ongoing health complications, further compounded his difficulties. In his later years, Coleman lived in relative obscurity, making occasional appearances on reality TV. His death in 2010 at age 42 marked the end of a tragic tale, one where fame could not protect him from the hardships of life. Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey's rise to fame was meteoric, with his unique brand of slapstick humor and boundless energy making him a comedy giant in the 90s. From Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, to The Truman Show, he quickly became one of the highest-paid actors in Hollywood, beloved for his over-the-top performances and ability to bring even the most absurd characters to life. However, beneath the bright lights, Carrey battled profound personal struggles. His jovial on-screen persona hid a deeply melancholic side, marked by periods of depression and self-doubt. While he continued to deliver box office hits, his mental health challenges grew more public. In the late 2000s, Carrey openly discussed his struggles with depression, even revealing that he had contemplated suicide in the past. Today, while Carrey still pursues acting and art, he has taken a step back from the limelight, embracing a more introspective life. His journey reflects the complexities of fame, where personal battles often remain hidden behind public triumphs. These tragic endings remind us that even the brightest stars can fall hard. Despite dazzling millions with their talent, many Golden Age legends spent their final days battling poverty, illness, and obscurity. Their stories are not just about loss, but about the human cost of fame. Which of these stories moved you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments and help us honor their memory by keeping their stories alive. Subscribe for more untold truths from Hollywood's past.